Welcome to Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
All right, welcome, guys. This is Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast. This is episode 5 with Russell Treasure from Treasure Your Wellbeing. He's from the UK, so this is going to be super interesting. I'm going to read through his bio so we can get to know him just a little bit, and then we'll spend some time talking to him. So Russell Treasure has been practicing mindfulness since his early 30s, started to teach in 2013 with a diploma distinction in teaching meditation and certificate in mindfulness based stress reduction, which I think all of us can use. Recent current clients include the Cheshire Police, Warrington Wolves, Leeds Rhinos, and Widnes Vikings. Sorry, I'm not from the UK, so if I screw up some of these names,
That's okay.
We got professional rugby players, the Alzheimer's Society, the Imperial War Museum, and various local councils. He enjoys working in prisons, schools, men's mental health groups, and with Rugby Football League. He is also involved as a mentor in the social enterprise Treasure Your Wellbeing CIC, which delivers outreach mindfulness to people in Warrington, and volunteers for the Salvation Army, Rugby League Foundations, and local food banks. So that's man, you got a lot going on, and this is interesting because I think a lot of what you're going to tell us today is stuff that most people don't really realize. I think, there's a little bit of a misnomer probably with the word mindfulness. And I think that I'm excited for you to kind of educate it. So there's your kind of official bio. Why don't you give us like the layman's version or whatever else you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody, by the way. I went through some sort of fairly major life changes back in 2008, 9, 10. And at the time, I was involved in property and all sorts of businesses. And my life was very complicated. So I decided that I needed to do something other than the standard route of going to the doctor and getting medication. I tried that, but it wasn't really for me. It wasn't having the right effect on me. And I found a local mindfulness class. And I started attending that, and I went every Friday night for 2 years because I knew that it was doing me a heck of a lot of good. And the reason that it helped me was that it taught me that it is possible to not be constantly worrying about your past events and potential future events. So after a couple of years, I realized that I wanted to pass this on to other people. And I completely changed career. I did the training and set myself up, as you guys say, with a shingle above the door for coaching people. And it's kind of like life coaching, stroke relaxation, helping with sleep, and anything really that's to do with mental health, mental fitness. And I probably got my break when I was approached by the local rugby league. Well, it's a super league team, Warrington Wolves, who are the sort of elite sports people. And that really got my name out there. So I then decided that I was going to, put all my efforts into teaching mindfulness and helping as many people as possible. And what I found was that when I could teach people to switch their thoughts off, whether that's for 10 seconds or 10 minutes, it was really helping them because it was detaching them from their fight or flight system, which many people know as the limbic system. And I was really, really impressed with a book that I read, which I don't know if it's made it over to the States or not, but it's called The Chimp Paradox by a guy called Professor Steve Peters. And it's a very, very interesting book insofar as he's a top neuroscientist, but he managed to explain the brain in simple terms so that almost anybody could pick the book up and understand how their thought processes worked. And it's very, very much worth a read.
I'll have to add that. I'll add that to the to underneath the podcast, so that way people can pick it up.
Absolutely, yeah. He's written about 4 books now, but the first one was The Chimp Paradox. And combined with my mindfulness training, which really, if I can just give a very quick explanation of how I see mindfulness. And
you don't, we've got time, so take as long of an explanation as you like. I mean, I want to educate people with this stuff, especially myself. So take as long as you want.
Well, mindfulness originated hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and it originated with the Buddhist monks over in the Far East. And it was brought over to the West by a guy called John Kabat-Zinn. And if you Google him, you'll find lots and lots of information out there. And mindfulness is it's the way you live your life. It's not something to learn and do like exercise, or it's not. You don't go to the gym for an hour every day. It's how you live your life. So it's not a religion. It's a process by which you start to recognize how you are reacting to what happens to you. Now, by that, I'll use a simple example. If you're on the roads and you're driving your car, maybe you're running a little bit late, and somebody cuts you up, what you tend to do is you go into this kind of self-defense mode, because the chimp brain, and if you read the book, it explains it. The chimp brain, which is the limbic system, it used to teach us how to run away or fight potential threats. So, it may have been an animal that wanted to eat us, or it may have been another gang of chimps, or, we're going back millions of years now. And it switches the muscles on and releases certain chemicals into the body. It's like when you feel that rush of adrenaline, it's because this little part of your brain has decided that you need to survive. And it elevates blood pressure and the pulse rate, etc. And
my wife does boxing, and that's one of the things they talk about with boxers right before before the fight and into that first round. You have to manage what they call the adrenaline dump, right? Because you're literally walking in to have your, someone punch you in the face. so yeah.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And of course, the challenge with that adrenaline dump is that you use a lot of energy in a short space of time, and your body reacts by, if anybody ever gets aching shoulders or they grit the teeth, it's because we're being prepared to run away or fight. And in general, humans tend to run away, unless you're Olympic heavyweight boxing champion, in which case, you might decide to fight. So over, many, many years, humans and even before humans, before we walked on our back legs, developed this ability to run away. And of course, we wouldn't be sat here now if we hadn't developed that ability. So it is a good thing. In many respects today, it's not a great thing, because it's switched on so easily by the smallest thing. So running late in your car, if you ever find that you're gripping the steering wheel really tightly, you're gritting your teeth, and you may even just be laid in bed thinking about things, about the previous events of the day, or what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next year, or even when you retire. We're constantly going backwards and forwards in time in our minds, and the mind doesn't know the difference between reality and thinking about things. So this chimp brain tends to take over and put us into fight or flight mode. Now, we can't stop thinking, but what we can do is decide what to think about. And one thing I always ask people to remember, if they forget everything else that I've talked about, is that it's not really what happens to us, It's how we react to what happens. That's what dictates our future. The immediate future and maybe further in, into the future of our lives. So we react to something. If we react in a fight or flight mode or via the chimp brain, which is a little piece of the brain called the amygdala, that's what kind of dictates our reactions. We tend to make decisions that, as Professor Steve Peters puts it, it doesn't know right from wrong. It just wants to survive. So we might make a decision that we later regret. We might say something or do something. If I said to you, I don't like your face, and I don't mind your face, by the way. So
I get that a lot. So,
yeah, me too. Our chimp brain, if it gets in first and it is faster, he's recorded the speed of reaction of certain parts of the brain. If it gets in first, it might say something like, I don't like yours. Or it might shrink away and go and hide because it's been attacked. Now, if we react from the human part of the brain, which is more behind here, the prefrontal cortex, we have a logical, calm, rational decision. So the outcome is different to the chimp outcome. Now, I read this book many years after I'd done my mindfulness training, but I realised that it was a great segue into explaining to people how mindfulness can help. And probably a long explanation of mindfulness is being in the present moment without judgment and realising what you're thinking about at that time. So if I can say, right, I can teach you how to press pause, and this is my preferred explanation of mindfulness. It's thinking about what you're thinking about. So we're probably, this isn't proven, but we're probably the only animal on the planet that can sit back and say, hang on, I've just had an angry thought, or I've just had a sad thought, and then change how we react to that. So what we can do is, let's press pause. Let's just, before we react, let's see what the best outcome is. And rather than running away or fighting, let's say something or do something different. And that's about, for me, being mindful of how you're feeling and how you're reacting in that moment. So
it's a little bit like allowing, so if you have a pipe, right, that's water's coming through and it's dirty water. So, rather than just letting the amygdala handle the dirty water and spew it out the other end, we allow the prefrontal, you stop, think, and allow the filter of the prefrontal cortex to filter that water so it comes out a little bit cleaner, depending on obviously who you are and your own biases and those kind of
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, we might just say, let's just allow the water to be dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have to fix it. We can allow it to happen. And one of my favorite exercises with people when I see the groups of people is to say, listen, why don't you look at a list of things that you can affect in life and a list of things that you cannot affect in life. And the stuff that you cannot affect, the water's dirty. Let's just let it be, let it happen. Or from the human part of the brain, can I do anything about it? And if I can filter it, fantastic. That's absolutely perfect. So the challenge with the brain is it's so fast. He's measured the reactions at 0.02 of a second.
Wow.
So if you said something horrible to me, my shoulders would be up and I'd be gritting my teeth because my chimp brain has taken over. So I would say to anybody out there, if you ever feel that your shoulders are sore and you kind of haven't been pushing weights at the gym, then think about what you're thinking about. We notice our reactions to thoughts in our body, primarily. We may say something. We may, go back to somebody with an insult if they've insulted us. But the first time that you recognise that your shoulders are up, and there's nothing wrong, I might be laid in bed, gritting my teeth. And then I've got to think about what I'm thinking about. And there are some great ways to practice this. And as I said earlier, it is a practice. It's something that we integrate into our lives all the time.
Yeah.
And, I always think that there are two main areas in mindfulness. One is this kind of going through the day, noticing, and I believe that noticing is probably the most important word when we're learning mindfulness. We notice how our body feels. We might notice what we say. For example, if I was to look out the window and it is pretty cold and sort of windy and wet at the moment out here, I might say it's miserable outside. Mm-hmm. The weather's miserable. And then, of course, that surely goes on the list of things that I cannot affect. So my chimp brain has said that. But if my human brain took over, it might just say, well, put a big coat on.
Yeah. We have another snowstorm today, and we've had snow since October. So that's my natural inclination is to, close my shades on the window.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereabouts are you?
We're in Montana.
Montana, right.
So yeah, we typically have long winters, and this winter has been even longer and colder and snowier than usual. But
okay. Well, we're very well used to that here in the north of England.
Yeah.
So.
You guys get a lot of rain, right? That's do you guys get much snow there? I don't think so, but
we've had a little bit of snow over the past week. We're near Manchester, but we're in a very flat area in Cheshire. So we don't get a massive amount of snow, but we do get a lot of water. So
yeah, a lot of rain. Are you familiar with, so my experience with mindfulness came really in chasing some back issues with my wife. Are you familiar with Dr. John Sarno?
I'm not.
So he wrote a book called Healing Your Back Pain. And it was crazy. So we've chased back pain with her for years, like stem cell and chiropractors and physical therapy. And I mean, $25,000 later, cause we have crappy, healthcare here. So, but someone had given her this book, and the premise is essentially that you may have an acute injury. And then that basically teaches your body, which in your case, the amygdala, that's a painful area. And so you have to protect it. But it essentially, this was a little bit beyond my understanding and kind of my experience, but it literally basically said, if you have, repressed thoughts and anger and all of these, that it essentially gets stored in your back. And for majority of the people that he spoke to, or his patients, it was a lower back pain issue. And he had over an 85% heal rate for his people. And it literally, so, and we won't go, maybe too much information, but he essentially could show you a unhealthy back, which may have slip discs and all these different structural issues, scoliosis or whatever happened to be. That person had no pain whatsoever. And then he could show you a perfect back, and that person had agonizing back pain, quote unquote perfect. And what they found was so she started reading this book, and within about 6 months, her back pain was gone.
Wow. Almost
exactly. I mean, like it was just, and she was back to doing, heavier weight training and boxing and jump rope and all. And when she wasn't able to get out of bed before. Mm-hmm. And all, now that I'm sitting here talking to you, I realize that really is just mindfulness training and taking control of the things that you can control of. Because they said that a lot of times he was talking about that you can have an acute injury, like you have a car accident or whatever, but essentially what your brain is telling you is that we have to be careful, and I will have a pain to keep you from making, from actually injuring yourself again, even though it's almost a phantom pain. So that might be an interesting study for you to read that book, but that's essentially what you're talking about, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. And I completely believe that 100%, because I've witnessed in front of my eyes people reducing their pain dramatically the first time they relax their body physically. Now, this has been successful with the rugby players, because I've worked with 3 or 4 of the Super League teams. And of course, those guys, much like your American footballers, get a lot of injuries. Mm-hmm. And what happens is, as you quite rightly say, if I injured my shoulder, I tend to hold it so that my body says, don't move that, because if you move it again, you'll make the injury worse, or you'll re-injure it. And when I see people relax for the first time, and their back relaxes, and their neck, and the face even, we've got nearly 60 muscles in the face, and you see people who look older than they should mm-hmm. do, because they're holding pain. And when people relax for the first time, which is part of my mindfulness kind of session, if I'm doing a full session with people, I do some talking, and then we do an actual, relaxation session where I try and get people to physically relax as well as mentally. Mm-hmm. And, obviously there's no medical proof whatsoever in the stuff I do, apart from what I've seen with my own eyes. And I see people relaxing at the end. They say, I can't believe it, but the pain's gone. And I believe it's, as you said, because we hold tension in the area of the old injury, the operation we had, whatever it might be. And when we fully relax for the first time, the pain disappears. Well, that's got to say something, hasn't it? Mm-hmm. And so then what I do is, as a follow-up for them to take away, is I say, well, what I want you to do is, next time you get the pain, I'd like you to sit down and relax, close your eyes, the usual stuff, listen to your breathing, lie down on the bed or sit in a comfortable chair, and focus on the pain, and tell your body, we've got an electrochemical connection from our brain, which is saying that hurts, to the part of the body that is in theory hurting. And we can send a signal to it and say, relax, relax my back, relax my shoulder, relax my face, whatever it might be. And if you do that, what you're doing, I believe, is that we're reprogramming that part of the body. And we're saying, you don't need to be in tension. You can be relaxed. And I've seen some people have some fairly dramatic changes, and it's not woo-woo or anything. It's just biology. Yeah, we're just saying to our body, I don't need that tension.
So, what would you say? I mean, what are the biggest misconceptions about mindfulness? That's kind of question number one. What do you think most people, when you say mindfulness, I had actually put in my email to Russell that, in a lot of circles, people will, say, oh, well, that's just woo woo stuff. And, I shouldn't be doing that, or, meditation and yoga and not shaving your armpits and all, so I don't know if what are some of the misconceptions about when you have to explain what you do for a living?
Yeah. How long have you got?
I got as much time as you want.
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is that people are put off mindfulness because they imagine that we're all going to put on an orange suit and sit with our legs crossed in the lotus position and kind of, do this with our fingers and thumbs and say om. And that's the kind of connection back, I guess, to the Buddhist side of it. And meditation, of course, doesn't need to be sitting there with your eyes closed listening to your breathing. It could be reading a book. For me, meditation is anything that distracts you from thinking about the past and the future. Okay. So whatever you're focused on, if you're climbing a cliff face and you're looking for handholds, you are meditating in effect on what you need to do right now. So the biggest misconception is that, as you say, it's woo-woo. It's one of my favourite terms, woo-woo. It's, I've spent the last 10 years trying to de-woo-woo mindfulness. And because I go into a lot of businesses, and corporates, and as you mentioned, the police, prisons, schools. And sometimes people say, what's it all about? You're not going to kind of get us to open up a space for, bad things to happen. And I counter that by saying, well, all I'm going to do is first of all, I'm going to get you fully relaxed physically. Let's get rid of all the tension, all the fight or flight tension in the body, because that's got a good knock-on effect of slowing down breathing, lowering blood pressure and heart rate. And, you just sit in a chair. You just sit there with your feet on the floor and your hands on your lap and close your eyes or lie on the bed. So we're not going to do anything that, is kind of... I joke about this stuff and people are entitled to believe whatever they believe in, but I try to make it lighthearted.
Yeah.
We're not trying to channel the spirit of the Archangel Michael, to come and talk to us and things like that. That's a perfectly valid belief system. That's not how I do mindfulness. I want to achieve three things. One is to physically relax the body. The second thing is to get the mind into a certain wavelength, i.e. alpha waves, which is, relaxation, and to stop thinking backwards and forwards in time. Just be present, thinking about the now. And another great book I'd love to recommend is Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. That was the first book I read many years ago on this subject. And the third thing is to induce a sense of relaxation so that you feel as if it was appropriate, i.e. the right place and time, that you could fall asleep. So you can pick any of those three things and do one of them. But if you want to fall asleep, for example, you need to do the first two. You need to relax the physical body and stop thinking and worrying about the past and the future. So what went wrong? What have I messed up? And what might go wrong? So if we're in the present, and even that term, I want to get you in the present moment, it sparks up sort of all sorts of conversations because it sounds a bit woo-woo, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, that's the biggest misconception, I think, that it's kind of a cultish or it's some sort of religion. And probably, as you know, even Buddhism, I'm not Buddhist. I just like the way they think. But it's not a religion. It's a belief system. It's a way of life. And that really can be a barrier to some people. Although, much like yoga, up till not that far long ago, yoga was seen as a bit of a, kind of woo-woo type of thing. And I believe that mindfulness is now coming into that category where if you mention to people that you practice mindfulness, they don't give you a funny look. They don't kind of run away. So it does have its challenges. But I believe that we are now in a kind of a spring stroke summer of mindfulness where people are prepared to give it a try. And as long as you don't appear in your kind of flowing robes and tell people
your shaved head or the Hare Krishna with the little tail look, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And that's all fine. It's absolutely fine. No problem at all, whatever you want to believe in. But what I kind of like to think is that I present mindfulness as something that most people would have a go at because I'm not asking them to do anything weird or strange. I'm not sort of trying to change how they dress or what they eat or what they believe in. I'm just trying to give them 10 minutes of peace a day.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help them to get to sleep. Because
I think so often people, the forgive me saying this, but the weirdest among us tend to co-opt very good ideas and throw some, crazy stuff, whether it's, and again, if this is your thing, whatever, but it's, throw some crystals in and they have to have their incense and all of this stuff when at the core of it, you're literally practicing what you're saying. You're being mindful, you're relaxing and all, and that's the heart of it. And then I think our human nature is to throw a whole bunch of stuff around it, maybe.
Yeah. I think, in the right place at the right time, candles and incense are very nice. They smell nice, they look nice, and, they can add a bit of ambience. But I think that if we want to get people to practice mindfulness on a regular basis, we don't always have that ability to have a room that we just want to practice it sat in the car or led in bed. And the only thing you need to practice mindfulness is your chair or a bed. You sit down and you can have a little bit of a space where you're not worrying about things backwards and forwards in time. And also you can practice it as you brush your teeth, as you eat, as you walk. So if you can imagine, if I'm brushing my teeth, we're going to say to people, use your senses to practice mindfulness, because they're always there. Now, if I'm brushing my teeth, I've got the smell of the toothpaste, I've got the sensation of the toothbrush on my teeth, I've got the taste, the sound. I can literally spend 2 minutes brushing my teeth, and when I come out of it, I realise that I haven't been thinking about anything else. And I think it particularly helps when people are worried about something that's going on in their life at that moment. If you have one of I call them the big four, the things that most people tend to struggle with, if they've got a challenge with money, health, relationships, or work.
Which pretty much everyone does.
Yeah.
Right.
And it might last for days, weeks, months, or even years. And if you can take a break from that for 1 minute, 10 seconds, we're trying to get the brain to say, I don't need to prepare to survive. I don't need to run or fight just for this little gap, this little period in time. And you see the difference in people just after the first time they experience that. And, it's difficult when you're beginning at first. It's quite difficult to achieve that. You need some guidance. So that might be, face to face in a class, or it might be you listen to a YouTube video or an app, something like that. But once you've been practicing for a couple of weeks, what you will find is if you can dedicate 10 minutes a day to mindfulness, you will find that your sleep is better. You don't have as many that's a massive thing. Imagine somebody who's constantly in a frictional situation with, a spouse or a friend or a colleague or other drivers on the road. It could be anybody you interact with. You find that those things tend to melt away because you're not always in that kind of stressed out mode. You're more relaxed about things as they happen, and you have different outcomes. And I've just found it to be absolutely incredible in terms of how it changed my life and many other people.
Now, so they do a lot of sports psychology, which is a different kind of thing, but like in golf, for example, I think is because there's been some popular movies and stuff. I'm interested. I've got a friend of mine that's actually a rugby player, and they go all over the world and all that, but that's not really something that we have a lot of here, which is rugby. But I'm really interested how you and I kind of the same question for like police officers or in prison or all that. I'd love to hear kind of these distinct groups and kind of what your approach is for each of them. And obviously there's a baseline, right? This is kind of what you do with everybody, but I'm interested in sort of how that gets manifested specifically in some of those groups.
Yeah, sure. Well, if we go through the different groups, the first one that springs to mind is rugby players. So these are elite sports people, you know. They have 80 minutes to win, lose or draw. And what that means is that it doesn't matter how much training, you know, these guys are ripped. I was with Warrington Wolves for a year, so I spent a lot of time with them in the gym, you know, in the changing rooms. And what they're thinking, because I asked this question before we started. I said, what are the challenges of being a professional rugby player? And number one is sleep. It's getting to sleep before the match and after the match. Okay, so we'll come back to that. And the second thing is that in the actual game, in play, am I so tense that I'm not going to be able to kick the ball or throw it because I'm so tense? You know, I don't know if you guys probably have, you don't know if you have cricket there, but you've got baseball. You know, if you catch a ball that's travelling at speed, if your muscles are very tense, it's going to pop back out. So you have to have what they call soft hands. And so we've got the first issue, which is worrying forwards and hoping that you're going to have a good game, but this little chimp in your mind is saying you might not do very well. You know, you might struggle, you might miss a kick, or you might not catch the ball or make a bad throw. And it's also after the game, he's saying, "Oh, we lost because I messed up. I didn't get that tackle. You know, I didn't do that correctly, and everybody thinks I'm an idiot." Okay.
Right.
So, and of course, you know, fans of sport do tend to be quite harsh sometimes in their criticism of people who are being paid to play sports. So on their mind is, what are other people going to think of me if I mess up tonight in the match? And then after the match, they're thinking, what do people think about me because I messed that up? And of course, the perfect person doesn't exist. Everybody makes mistakes.
Right.
You know, I've never met anybody who's never made a mistake anyway. And so then they lie awake at night. You know, they're worrying, thinking, ruminating, and it's not good because sleep is one of, in my opinion anyway, it's one of the most important things. You know, we need that sleep. And then during the game, if they are very tense, of course, you need to be tense when you're going into a tackle because two bodies are hitting each other at a combined speed of maybe 30 miles an hour.
And they weigh 225 pounds apiece.
Correct.
Or more.
Yes. So it's during the game. Am I relaxed? Am I going to catch this ball or kick this ball or throw this ball? In any sport, you know. So what I tried to approach first of all was the sleep issue. And all I did, I got 30, I think there were 34 in the squad. And I got them to all lie down on the gym floor and I took them through a session of physical relaxation and then getting the mind to think about something that's happening now, using the senses. So it might be listening to your breathing, or it might be the touch of your body on the floor. Many ways of doing that. And then, because of the sleep being a big issue, I took them through the third part of the session, which is to get the brain to start coming down into... So as we speak now, we're roughly in beta wavelength. Relaxation into alpha, which might be meditation or just before you're falling asleep. And then deep sleep is delta. So I'm trying to get the brains to come down. So being led down, it's a lot easier. And I took them through that, and I saw them every week for a whole season. And again, the reactions was fantastic. You know, they some of them fell asleep in the actual session, and it was just great to watch. So we do that, and to practice on the actual field is a little bit more challenging, because once I'm into that mindset of going out there, and it's kind of like, you know, and I'm going to batter the other guy, and it's a little bit more problematical to get them to practice mindfulness out on the pitch, because it's not easy to remember. Oh, what did Russell say when I'm about to throw? Russell said, you know, it's not going to happen, is it? But some of the areas where you can do that, and you mentioned golf, and it might be before you take the shot. You see golfers do this, and some people call it centering themselves or grounding themselves. Before you take a kick for a goal in rugby, or you know, American football, or English soccer, as you guys call it, you have this time to take a moment. You don't have to put the ball down and run up and kick it. And you see this a lot with rugby players. They step back and they look at the ball, look at the goal, and they will just pause. And that is mindfulness. You know,
I was listening to this thing about Jack Nicklaus. I think it's Jack Nicklaus. It could have been Arnold Palmer, but one of the great golfers of all time. And they were talking about his pre-shot routine. And they actually studied him and some films and all that. And they could show within every single time over thousands of shots that his routine only varied by less than a second. And so and it was the exact same actions every time, but it may take half a second longer, half a second, you know, less time. But that mind, you know, that's essentially mindfulness. And I think that's because if you get into a situation, and I'm not a good golfer, I'm a okay golfer. But if you get in a situation where you're worried, okay, there's especially these guys, because they're teeing off, and there are people 10 feet this direction and 10 feet that direction. So if they hit the ball, somebody dies, which I don't understand why you would want to sit there. But you've got to be in that moment so that's all you're thinking about. Otherwise you do what is called shanking it, right? Like it just goes, you know, awry or whatever. So that's and I guess of those actions, whether it's be kicking or, you know, anything that you have those few seconds is probably a little bit easier to find your center, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think you can use that time as well to use the power of the mind to imagine the ball being struck correctly, to see the ball going down the middle. And that, again, is something I'm quite interested in, is the power of negative thoughts against positive thoughts. You know, if you go into a game thinking we're going to get beaten, and I play badminton a lot. I've been playing badminton for a long time, and you see players going on, and you almost know that they're going to lose because they think that they're going to lose. So you know, with a shot or a kick, whatever it might be, where you're aiming to get as close to perfection as possible every time, if you go in there thinking you're going to mess up, then the chances are you'll mess up. So.
And I think that can translate pretty easily to kind of your average guy, right? We put on this tough persona, but I think a majority of us, pretty much all of us, have, you know, self-esteem issues, and you know, we're especially when it comes, I think, to marriage and family. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like if you take this to like a non-sports activity, that, you know, you're sitting on the couch and you need to go talk to your kids or need to just go interact with your kids. When I was my kids are older now, but when I had little kids, like, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And so if my thought process is, I don't have any idea what the hell I'm doing, that affects the way I interact with them versus really kind of thinking through those things and kind of going through the shot, so to speak. What is this next half hour of playing with my kids going to look like? What is this next conversation with my spouse going to look like? Would that be something that would make sense?
Absolutely. I think that you can prepare to have a good time with your family, or you can prepare for things to go wrong. And I think if you get that straight in your mind, that you can actually rehearse to have a good interaction with anybody, and of course the power of mindfulness is that to have that pause before you go into the situation and get your mind right, get it into the right mindset, what's going to happen. And when you're dealing with children or animals, something's going to happen, isn't it? So you might say, well, if this happens, I'm just going to stay calm. I'm not going to get angry or frustrated. And if you just sit there and take a breath and press pause and say, right, okay, I'm now going to go into this situation. And when it's not if something happens, it's when something happens, I'm hoping I'm going to deal with that from this part of the brain instead of, the chimp. And that's very much a practice that I encourage people to do, because it makes life so much easier.
Yeah.
If you can come to a point where you are effectively managing conflict through your thoughts, through how you react to what happens, then life becomes easier. Life's never simple. Something every day, isn't there? Something happens that you have to deal with. But life can become easier if you are using this part of the brain rather than the fight or flight part of the brain.
So in relationships, I like in a marital relationship, obviously this is, you call it a practice for a reason, because it takes practice. And so, for guys that are listening to this, that are like, yeah, I could really use that in my interaction with my spouse, my wife. It's almost a matter of, hey, honey, this is some stuff I want to try. So as we discuss, if I pause for 15 seconds, I didn't just have a stroke. I'm trying to, we call it kind of take your thoughts captive. Right. Like that's something that, because the idea is to catch the thought catch it before it goes and misses my frontal cortex and comes out of my mouth to say something in reaction. Right. So like that, just like with weight training or anything else, you have to do those repetitive motions with weight training. For example, it's a matter of tearing down the muscle. So if your mind is a muscle and it's used to being, going in this certain way, it's a matter of tearing that aspect down and then rebuilding it into new pathways, I would think. So, it's a matter of learning and kind of doing these things. I've been married for 28 years, and even without knowing it, I have had to learn over time, and with my kids too, learn over time that, whatever your first thing that you want to say when you're pissed off is probably the last thing you need to say. So shut up. But I think how would you recommend that guys go about kind of just practicing? Like, what's a practical approach when it comes to, those are two easy ones, marriage, wife and kids.
Yeah. We're talking about conflict resolution, aren't we?
Right.
Really. And I believe that you can practice the scenario in your mind to make sure that, like the muscle, you get the correct reaction. So you want to react from the right part of the brain. You don't want to react from the chimp, because
right.
That chimp is going to have a fight.
Yeah.
Unless the other person is a lot bigger and sort of more aggressive than you.
Or a boxer like my wife, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I learned something very interesting from a conflict resolution course I did, and that was also mentioned in the Chimp Paradox book. I should be on commission from that guy, right?
Yeah. We'll have to give me your Amazon link. We'll use that link.
Yeah, I've sold hundreds of books for him. There are three parts to potential conflict resolution. One is to say, did you know that what happened? So you said this, or you did that, made me feel like this, sad, angry, frustrated, whatever. And the potential outcome, if we don't resolve it, is this. So three parts: what happened, how it made you feel, and what might happen if we don't fix it. Okay. So a lot of people would find it very difficult to go up to their wife or husband or spouse and say, did you know that when you said you think I'm sort of, I don't know, not a very nice person, I felt really down and we might end up getting divorced? Just as an example, right. I made up. A lot of people would find it difficult to say that to their spouse, but you can mess around with the wording but making sure you get those three main areas in, and by practicing that before you go into the situation, you can come out with a much better outcome. You know, I believe that also calmer people have calmer resolutions. So if you are practicing mindfulness daily, which I've been doing for more than 10 years, you tend to find that you don't react to everyday stuff in the same way that you would have if you didn't practice. You generally tend to, I heard this in a film, I can't remember which one, but it's don't sweat the small stuff. You know, you allow it to happen without reacting. If you have to take action, you know, if you have to run out of the way of a car, I wouldn't stand in the middle of the road with a car about to hit me and say, oh, it's going to be fine. You know, mindfulness will get me through, because I'm going to get hurt. Yeah. So I want my chimp to take over my body and make me run out of the way. But there are certain situations where you don't need to react. You don't need to say anything. You know, going back to the example before, if somebody says to me, I don't like your face, I'd like to be able to say, okay. It's not going anywhere then, is it?
Yeah.
I've not created friction. They can't say anything back to that. And life's a bit easier again. So it is a practice, and you can practice it in your head, like practicing a golf swing or a kick of a ball, or, you know, even for many years now, I'm a big Formula One fan. And I noticed Jensen Button.
I was not until I started watching the Netflix show. Now I'm addicted to that show.
Yeah, but what's that called? It's in its fifth series now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Drive to Survive, I think is what it's called. Yeah. Well, I noticed that Jensen Button was sat in his car in the pits with he's got his helmet on, but he's completely still. And he said later that what he does is he drives the lap in his head. In his mind, he can brake at the perfect point. He can turn the wheel the perfect amount of degree, you know, the perfect turn to get through, clip the apex, apply the throttle at the perfect time to get the best speed down the next straight. And that's what he did. Now, when the mind is practicing that, or anything, not just sport, but any interaction in life, you go into that interaction from a completely different place in your head. The mind is now thinking of a calm, logical, rational solution. The chimp's going in going, I need to win, or I need to survive, I need to run away. And as you can see, imagine if you came to a fork in the road. The fork
represents what happens. I don't like your face. Let's say that's the occurrence. The left fork is what happens if the chimp is running you. The right fork is what happens if the human is running you. Okay? So I don't like your face. I don't like yours. Bang. Or
Right.
all right, you don't like me. I'm just gonna go and stand in the corner because people don't like me. You feel like you're being thrown out of the gang, the group, or the troop of chimps. Body is tense. Your heart rate and blood pressure are up. You feel awful, and you may be depressed or anxious. If you can press pause and say, hang on a minute, I don't like your face. Okay. Then being mindful of what has happened, whether it's something that's happened or somebody has said something, you are now in a much nicer, easier place. And of course, if you had to take action, you would. If it was a true life or death situation, or you needed to stop somebody repeatedly doing something horrible to you, you would still take that action. But you take the action from the human side of the brain, and life's easier.
Yeah.
So mindfulness allows us, when we practice, to just pause before we react.
Yeah, there's a movie called Rush, which has is the Nicky Lauder, James. I can't remember
James Hunt.
James Hunt, and at that time, now they have simulators, but at that time they didn't. And I'm assuming that drivers still do this. But there's a scene where it shows James Hunt driving Sebring or whatever course that it was, but it's like you're describing. I mean, he's just sitting in a chair with a steering wheel or whatever, and he's driving the entire course. Well, they're going 200 miles an hour. So it's kind of a life or death thing. But if you really break that down, our thought process is just as quick when we're interacting with people in our life. So it's that pre-preparation, which I guess is you don't need the pre, but it's a preparation for those turns and apexes and, braking and all of that. Right.
Absolutely, yeah, and of course, practice does help. The actual practice, but I guess using mindfulness in that analogy would mean that before you go out there, you're in the best possible mindset. You're not thinking, I could crash, or what if it goes wrong? What if a wheel drops off? Or you're going out in a relaxed, but still prepared to do what you've got to do. But I actually raced in motorsport for about 12 or 13 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was great fun. But I noticed that if I was stressed in the car, I got tired very quickly, and I tended to wrench the wheel, stab the brakes, and was out of breath within 5 or 10 minutes. But if I went into it relaxed, the car seemed to float around, and I was still tired by the end, but I wasn't tired after the first 10 minutes. So you can apply that to anything. You get used to the speeds, of course, but I think when you first get into a car, say your very first race, you're absolutely rigid. You're gripping the steering wheel, gritting your teeth, wondering what's going to happen. But after a little bit of experience, and providing you learn to relax and you've done your preparation mentally, then that experience of driving a car very quickly on a circuit is much easier, less stressful, less exhausting. Yes. And you could apply that to anything in life, couldn't you?
Mm-hmm. Logistically, I'm wondering if, I've taken a ton of your time, but I've got this thing called Maxed Out Morning. So that's, which is basically a morning routine that we do. So I'm interested if you can help me put mindfulness logistically into this space. So what I end up doing is I wake up, drink water, practice gratitude, say something in my head that I'm thankful for. Then I do a little bit of cardio. I do sauna, cold plunge, and then kind of, get my day, breakfast and get my day started. So within that context, is this something that you would do like before you get out of bed? Is that the best time to do it? Or is it, what part of that process would you kind of inject? And then, and what does that look like?
Well, I would say that is all fantastic after you've got out of bed.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything that you're doing is great. What I would do, and what I do nearly every morning, is if the alarm goes off or I wake up naturally, I lie there for, depending on how my day looks, for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Sometimes I have half an hour, and I'll lie there on my back. And this is a way to do it, to get, a true sense of relaxation, is lie on your back, put your hands on the mattress either side, and your feet straight, not crossed. So we don't want any of the parts of the body touching each other.
Okay. Close
your eyes. And of course, this could potentially, if you're tired, get you back to sleep. So set an alarm, set another alarm for when you need to get out of bed. Lie there and work your way through all of your muscles from your feet up to the top of your head. Breathe in and tense something. So clench your fists and breathe out and relax them. Start at the feet. So do the feet, the calves, the quads, the glutes, hands and arms, shoulders, the jaw, relax all the facial muscles and the scalp. And with your eyes closed, work through that. So in breath tense, out breath relax, each muscle group. Stay there. That should take a couple of minutes. And then just literally feel where you're touching the bed. So notice all the contact points of your heels, your calves, your glutes, your back, shoulder blades, back of your head, and your hands. Just notice the signals that are coming back through your body's nerve endings. Notice all of the touch points. So what we're starting to do is get the mind to think about something that's happening now. Then for a couple more minutes, just listen to your breathing. Feel your stomach rise and fall as you breathe out. And notice that when you breathe in through the nose, it feels cool because it's room temperature. And as you breathe out, it feels warmer because it's body temperature. Mm. So all we're trying to do, and it's there all the time, and when it's not there, then we won't be worried anyway. But so what we're trying to do is get the mind focusing on anything that's happening now. It could be the ticking of a clock. And literally, once the body's relaxed and the breathing slowed down, you can notice then that there are little gaps at the beginning of the end of each breath. So most people think we breathe in and we breathe out. Well, of course, if we start to notice what's happening, we might realise that at the end of each out breath is a little pause. We don't breathe straight back in. And then at the end of the in-breath is a little pause. So we now realise that there are 4 parts to each breath cycle. Again, we're just getting the mind to focus on this thing that's happening right now. So we don't worry about what we've got to, that might happen to us in the day. Because as humans, we tend to think the worst, don't we? Sometimes we catastrophize. And you are giving your mind and your body a fantastic way to start the day by not leaping out of bed, rushing around and, having to get stuff done. You're giving yourself a little bit of space to start the day in the human brain rather than the chimp brain. Because the chimp's thinking, if I don't get this done, I might lose money or I might be late. And the chimp's constantly catastrophizing and worrying about what might go wrong. So if we can start the day from a relaxed, mindful perspective, the day tends to be easier, doesn't it? Mm-hmm.
And are you trying to shut off your kind of thought process at this time, other than all the sensations that you're experiencing, right? Is that
we're trying to stop worrying about what we did yesterday, or that we didn't get a great night's sleep, or what might happen today that will go wrong. We're not planning, we're not, that planning can come. If we need to plan the day, then fine, but not now. This time is just for you to press pause and relax and get your body and your breathing and your mind all in a nice, state of complete relaxation. And then the alarm goes off, because once you've done that, I've done it where I didn't have to get out of bed for 3 months because I'd snapped my Achilles tendon. And I did it for 2 hours. I didn't fall asleep. I just lay there in a complete state of relaxation. And now, believe me, I nearly floated off the bed because I was so relaxed. It's an amazing feeling.
That's great. Yeah, I use, and again, I've done this. I do stuff without even knowing I'm doing stuff. But like one of the ways I get through my cold plunge is I take very deep breaths. I hold those breaths for 2 to 3 seconds, couple of seconds. Then I breathe all the way out as much as I can, and then I hold that. And so it's a very deliberate, because water's cold and it sucks for those. I do 3 minutes. I do 3 minutes, and so like that's helped me a lot to be able to do that. But I definitely want to incorporate the mindfulness stuff. But it's a lot better than grabbing your phone and looking at social media or whatever. I think everybody should have mindfulness training before they're allowed to be on social media. The world would be a better place. But no, I think that's amazing. I think that I'll definitely incorporate that and make sure I tell people about it.
Sure. What I would recommend is, if you can't remember all that stuff that I've just told you, is to find something on YouTube, and listen to it through your earphones, or just pop the phone by the side of the bed. I've got some YouTube videos. I'm not trying to do an advert or anything, but there are thousands.
Oh no, we'll get your links for sure. We'll definitely send people your way.
There are thousands of videos out there, all completely free on YouTube, and you find the voice you like. You might prefer a female voice or a Scottish voice or an American voice or whatever. But if you can get a week or two of being guided as to what to do next, it becomes easier, because it's sometimes difficult to remember everything, and that will definitely give you a great start to the day.
And I think I messed you up. I want to make sure I understand. So after you go through the full body, doing your breaths, is there what's the kind of coming out of it steps?
Well, I think that, let's say you've set a
not
timer.
that you want to completely come out of it, right? Like you want to kind of be mindful for the rest of the day.
Yeah, you do. But you've got to be careful if you have work to do or you've got tasks to do. You don't want to be led there all day. So set a timer for 5-10 minutes, however long you've got. There's an old saying, which is a bit of a cliche, but somebody said once that you should practice mindfulness for half an hour a day. And if you haven't got time, you should practice it for an hour. So
that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, I like that one myself. I didn't make that up. It's somebody else's. So, I think that, say your timer goes off after 10 minutes, a nice gentle, not a really loud, horrible alarm, but something nice and gentle. And you start to just feel your body again through your mind, and wiggle your fingers and toes, and gently open your eyes, when you're ready, slowly, and ease yourself off the bed and put your feet on the floor, and just feel your feet on the floor for a few seconds. And this is a really good exercise. When you're sat there and you've just done your little mindfulness session, say to yourself, I wonder what my next thought's going to be. It's really interesting because it gets you thinking about what you're thinking about. I'm now going to think about money, or what's for a breakfast, or, I need to deal with this, I pay this bill, whatever it might be. And the more that you do that, the longer you can go without actually thinking about something. It's a nice little exercise to do.
That's great. I think that's something that could make a huge difference in my life, especially, I'm not a sleeper. I don't require as much sleep. Like I'm one of those, like I use my little sleep app and my average time to sleep is about 3 minutes. So from the time that I start the app, which means I'm ready to go to sleep, it's about 3 minutes. And the funny thing is I look at those graphs and it basically, within about 2 or 3 minutes, I die and then I stay dead and then I wake up. It's just it's a really, like the graph graph goes really deep. I kind of worry about that sometimes, but as far as like my wake up and getting, my brain kind of never shuts off. So being able to practice that mindfulness to, I'm not great at relaxing. So this is something that I can put into practice for myself. So
excellent.
Very interesting. I really appreciate it. Why don't you tell us where to find you and, how to reach out if we need to and follow you on social media and all that.
Yeah, fantastic. I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, anybody can reach out to me. It doesn't matter whereabouts in the world you are. I'm happy to, give any tips or advice or just chat, about whatever you've got going on. But my website is russelltreasure.co.uk. I'm on social media as Russell Treasure. So YouTube channel that I would recommend if you're just starting out. I've got a video and I think it's called Russell's Half an Hour Mindfulness video. It's on my channel, and pop that on and just lie there, sit there and close your eyes and listen to my voice. And I will talk you into mindfulness, basically. I do a bit of Facebook stuff, but that's more personal stuff, and maybe a little bit of Twitter. But I'm not a massive social media fan myself.
Well, you're too busy being mindful. That will take you out of mindfulness faster than anything is being on social media. Yeah,
don't read the news, don't watch the news on TV, and don't look at social media. But I like to put stuff on Facebook that kind of, it might celebrate something I've done that day, or something I want to remember with photographs and things. But I don't comment on social media hardly ever. So yeah, I've got a Facebook page as well. But again, I'm not a great proponent of constantly posting. Of course, LinkedIn is probably the one I use the most because that's how I get in front of the B2B business clients. So, yeah, I'm not a fantastic self-promoter. I don't do a great deal of marketing. It's mainly word of mouth stuff. So,
I'll put those links on the show page too. That way we can find.
I think if I was going to recommend one thing to look at, it'd probably be my YouTube channel, and have a look at some of the videos on there.
That sounds great. Well, this has been extremely interesting to me. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing this with me. So I hope that people will kind of take your advice, go to your YouTube channel and just get started on a, more mindful journey. And, you get your crystals and all that stuff if you want, but you don't really need it. You don't really need it. You
just need a chat.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.